Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. One of my viewers wanted me to talk about an alleged situation of police brutality. Now, this viewer had seen my video where I talked about Sonia Massey, the black woman who was shot and killed by Officer Sean Grayson after she called 911 to report a disturbance outside of her home, which led to this rogue police officer, Sean Grayson, looking to come into her home and looked around her home. And then as she was dealing with Officer Sean Grayson, he then allegedly pulled his firearm and shot at Sonia Massey, taking her life. Now, after seeing that video, this viewer wanted me to talk about another possible situation of a alleged rogue police officer, Marisa Burkdoll, who works in the Visalia Police Department, and sent me footage of her possibly using excessive force as related to the alleged beating of Raimundo Rubio in 2020. Now, back in 2020, a mentally disabled man, Raimundo Rubio, was seen inside of a parking lot, allegedly looking in the windows of vehicles. And as he was seen looking in the windows of these vehicles, this is where the Visalia Police Department was contacted, and Raimundo Rubio was confronted by Officer Marisa Burkdoll and another officer from the K9 unit. And after being confronted by Officer Marisa Burkdoll and this officer, who was a part of the K9 unit, this is where they wound up in a confrontation. And in that confrontation, what happened was this Officer Marisa Burkdoll got into an altercation with Raimundo Rubio as she was looking to arrest him. And as she was looking to arrest him, she basically wound up hitting him several times with a flashlight. And the K9 officer had his dog go out and bite this Raimundo Rubio, and escalated this altercation into a incident which possibly could have used excessive force, from what I saw in the video, as they looked to file charges against him. And what the viewer wants to know are two things. What they want to know is, one, is Officer Marisa Burkdoll possibly a woman in crisis? And they also wanted me to talk about the situation of her possibly having to deal with another activist, which I will deal with later on as related to this case. Now, when I take a critical look at the video as related to Officer Marisa Burkdoll, possibly she is one of these rogue police officers who is one of these feminist indoctrinated women, like I talk about in my book, The Woman Crisis. And from what the viewer showed me as related to the video of this incident that took place on January 22nd of 2020, there's definitely some things that could be said that this situation could have been excessive force, because this behavior as related to hitting this individual multiple times with the flashlight that I saw in the video, and also the biting with the dog, that could have been excessive force. However, when I look at this guy, Raimundo Rubio, I really don't see how he really helps his case, because one, here you have a person who has disabilities, who's out at night unsupervised, which I really found to be quite suspect, because my sister, who was disabled when she was alive about 4 years ago, we always looked out for her to make sure that she was safe. And this guy basically, again, having a developmental disability and being out on the streets at night, that's really something that I have an issue with, because somebody should have been supervising him. Moreover, when it came to this young man, nobody really was watching out for him. And what's even sadder was that you had law enforcement, which really could not be observant as related to this case, I mean, you would think members of law enforcement would be a bit more observant as related to somebody's behavior and see that, okay, maybe this individual has some sort of developmental disability based on their body language, based on their facial expression, based on the way that they are acting. But there was no sort of observation as related to this. No, because you had an officer who basically was in her feelings and basically hopped up on power, really was not critically thinking the way a smart police officer would. A smart police officer would have looked at this individual and said, hey, maybe there's some sort of disability with this individual for them to be participating in this kind of behavior, looking in the interior of cars, and after looking in the interior of cars, look at their face and say, hey, there's something wrong with this individual, because there's only two people who would look into the interior of a car. One would be an individual looking to participate in, looking to break and enter that vehicle, and two, an individual who possibly was mentally disabled. And you would think by asking a couple of critical questions, you would see that this person possibly has some sort of disability. And once you saw that this person had a disability, this is where the officers should have been saying, okay, where are your parents? Where are the people who are supposed to be supervising you? And then look to take that individual into custody, and take that individual into custody by, again, just taking them to the station to find out who is the one supervising this individual. But Marisa Burkdoll and the officer that was with her did not do that. No, what they wanted to do was go participate in what I believe to be excessive force and looking to, again, physically assault this guy, Raimundo Rubio. And as they looked to physically assault him, as they were looking to arrest him, they basically escalated a situation to the point where it just got out of control. And unfortunately, Raimundo Rubio, basically, he could not really get anything done as related to a complaint in the case of things due to the gynocentric system, basically looking to cover for Officer Marisa Burkdoll. No, as he tried to make a complaint, what he did basically was go out and basically, again, do things that were detrimental to himself, and again did things detrimental to himself because as a mentally disabled individual, he did not really know how to do things. And again, I have to look at the parents and the people supervising him as related to what happened to him, as related to his lawsuit against the Visalia County PD. And I also have to look at his parents as related to what happened as related to the outcome of his case, because in the outcome of his case, here you have a mentally disabled individual and the DA steering him to go out here and plead guilty to charges, pleading guilty to those charges, which would have been detrimental to his civil lawsuit and possibly getting a judgment. I mean, I look at those actions, and again, they show me that there's a real serious problem as related to the case of Raimundo Rubio, in that he couldn't get any disciplinary action done against this officer who possibly did use excessive force, again, against a mentally disabled individual, because with mentally disabled individuals, they are people that you really want to handle carefully, and you want to basically make sure that they're taken care of. You want to make sure that they're taken care of because these are individuals who can't really take care of themselves. I know this from living with a mentally disabled sister for many years. These are people who really you need to watch out for. And again, I have to really look at the parents of this individual. I have to look at the people who were caring for this kid, because this person was out on the streets late at night all by themselves. And that, to me, is a red flag. When you have a disabled individual, they need supervision. And yes, this officer was out of line, as I saw in the video. But what is more troubling to me is that you had people who weren't doing their job. And because they weren't doing their job, this young man basically got taken advantage of by this rogue police officer who abused this man and this canine officer who had him bid up. and also taken advantage of by a district attorney's office that was more interested in clearing a case than and protecting the reputation of a rogue female police officer and protecting that rogue female police officer as related to their behavior. Again, I look at this whole case and it looks like to me like a case of gynocentrism where the males look to protect this rogue female at the expense of this disabled individual and protect them, and again showing us how they basically cared more about protecting this woman rather than securing the rights of a mentally disabled man. Now, what's really troubling for me as related to this case is that they basically led to this guy, Raimundo Rubio. He pleaded guilty, and again, you would think a mentally disabled individual would not be allowed to plead guilty to any sort of crime. You wouldn't think that you would want to have a mentally disabled individual from being able to, again, be pleading guilty to a crime because they're mentally incompetent at this point, and mentally incompetent as related to things, and that's really troubling to me. Really troubling to me because I look at that whole situation, and again, you have a mentally disabled individual being made to, again, plead guilty to a crime, and as they pled guilty to crimes of drug possession and misdemeanor resisting arrest, they basically went out here and got the case basically cleared, and after they got the case cleared, they wanted to try to go out here and have a lawsuit to, again, get some sort of case, but they're really hard to do that. Again, all this was done by the criminal justice system. Criminal justice system more about looking to protect this rogue female police officer rather than protect the citizen. And again, this is a situation that happened basically to this Hispanic guy because they was going against a white woman, showing us all again that they will go to all lengths to protect this white woman. Now, the viewer further goes on and talks about how Officer Marisa Burkdoll has this issue with this activist from Visalia and wanted me to talk about that activist. Well, when I look at the actions of that activist who looks to continue following behind Marisa Burkdoll, this guy basically is a textbook simp, like I talk about in my book, Stop Simping, Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance. He's a simp who basically has a fetish for female police officers and has a fetish where he's looking to have a woman have power over him. And that basically is something that many beta males look to do because beta males, again, want to have a woman be the one who has power over them. But these men basically want these women to have power over them because they're afraid to take power for themselves. And because they're afraid to take power for themselves, what these individuals look to do is hope to find a woman that will be able to allow them to sate their sexually deviant fetishes, because this is a sexually deviant fetish that this guy is participating in. And I go in depth on this in my book, The Man Crisis, in the chapter, The Sexual Deviancy of the Beta Male, and what this dude wants to do by having these run-ins with this female police officer who is married to a man who's 20 years older than her. It's basically he wants to, again, participate in his deviant sexual fetish where he hopes to be abused by this woman. I mean, he's got some real serious issues as related to his alleged actions that are shown on video, and his actions basically are not a mutual relationship. No, they are all part of a man participating in a sexually deviant fetish, where he hopes to possibly get to a point where he may possibly wind up getting arrested by Marisa Burkdoll, which basically is a way for him to sate his sexual pleasure, hopefully be a way for him to sate his sexual pleasures by getting involved with this tough, feminist indoctrinated woman who has a pseudo-masculine persona, hopes that by getting involved with this woman as related to things, he will be subjugated and dominated, hopes that he will get subjugated and dominated by this woman who basically is enabled to be in this position of power by males who are simps, enabled by simps who basically look to allow her to get away as related to her egregious behaviors against this disabled man. Again, look to get away with her behaviors as related to these alleged behaviors against this mentally disabled man. Again, all enabled by the gynocentric system of white supremacy, which basically wants to give this woman give this woman power in this situation over these men. And again, this whole situation is one where we have this woman allowed to go rogue because the culture of that department allows individuals to go rogue. But in the case of this mentally disabled man, Raimundo Rubio, I have to scratch my head. Because I still wonder, what is a mentally disabled man doing without supervision late at night? That's a red flag for me as somebody who lived with a disabled family member. Who passed away in 2020, I have to say, where are the parents? Where are the people? This guy should have not been on the streets at night participating in that behavior. He should not have been in those streets, again, looking into cars, because that's something that, again, I would see as a red flag. And again, be something that I would not want to, again, have this guy out here and being brutalized like this. But the whole thing is, he should have been taken away and put into a vehicle, and they should have called for backup to take him to the station. They should have taken him to the station and gotten him some help, but he didn't get any help because you had a feminist indoctrinated woman basically looking hopped up on her power. You had a beta male looking to use the dog to try to impress her in a covert contract, and you had a department looking to cover up a whole situation that shows us how dysfunctional leadership has become as related to law enforcement, because these rogue police officers, again, they not only go after black people. Now, they target black people first because they have a deep hatred of black people, but they target anyone who doesn't fit into their smooth world. And that's what happens here, again, with rogue officers. But rogue officers they're allowed to be this because they're a part of a culture of white supremacy, a culture of white supremacy that is allowed to go on because people don't stand up and don't know how to stand up. Because in the case of Raimundo Rubio, possibly what happened here is that people who were supposed to be looking out for him didn't look out for him. And as a result, Marisa Burkdoll is still on the job as out here, again, as related to situations like this. And that's what's really troubling, because there's no real leadership. And because there's no real leadership, people in that area may be at the mercy of a rogue police officer that could lead to somebody possibly winding up in a tragic situation like Raimundo Rubio, or even worse, wind up in a tragic situation like the one Sonia Massey wound up in. Now, this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want to request a video, you can send a donation for a minimum of $15 to the Cash App or the PayPal by clicking the links in the description box. And if I know something about that subject, I will make that video for you. And if you give me details that's related to the research, I will make that video for you. And if you want to learn more about the dysfunctional behavior that individuals wind up participating in, that can wind up putting them in situations like this, and how to avoid it, you can pick up my books, The Woman Crisis, The Man Crisis, and Stop Simping, Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance. You can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle, Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Learn how to avoid predatory females like Instagram models and e-girls in their virtual con games with Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Get your copy of Stop Simping in Cyberspace in paperback and Kindle today. Now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Man Crisis, comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.